Welcome back, welcome back. In the 1980s, Ron Howard had one of the most recognizable faces in America after his performances as Richie Cunningham in Happy Days. Today, he's, of course, an Oscar winner. That was from A Beautiful Mind, and he's one of the most sought-after directors in the movie industry. His films, including Cocoon, Apollo 13, and A Beautiful Mind, have been nominated for 34 Academy Awards. His latest film is called Nixon. It's a film based on a play about my television interviews with President Nixon in 1977. Here's a quick look at the movie.
You know, it's a funny thing that I've never been challenged to a duel before. I guess that's what this is.
Yeah, well, not really.
Of course it is. And I like that. No holds barred, eh? No holds barred.
Ron, you've selected a great variety of subjects for your films: Splash, A Beautiful Mind, Apollo 13, The Da Vinci Code, and so on. What was it that really appealed to you about this project? Where was it when you thought it?
Well, in fact, well, this is bizarre. Here, first of all, I've always wanted to be interviewed by you. I pined for it for years. I had to make a movie about you in order to finally get on one of your programs. But this is fantastic.
We've been waiting for that.
I was talking to Peter Morgan about another project altogether, which actually didn't wind up coming to fruition. But he mentioned that he was, he's a screenwriter, that he was going to do a play about the Frost-Nixon interviews. And he teases me now that my eyes kind of glazed over. Well, in fact, I certainly recall the interviews. In fact, they were significant. I was one of those 400 million people leaning forward watching, every program. And the outcome of it was very cathartic to me, personally. So I remembered them, but I didn't quite see, where the drama was. I had no idea what the behind-the-scenes machinations were like. I hadn't read your book. I didn't know, really what had gone on and all that drama. So when I read it, I realized, well, not only would this make a great play, but I think there's a movie in it. And I asked Peter, and he said, oh, I don't know. I really constructed it as a play, but other directors are saying the same thing you're saying, Ron. Well, now I realized I was in a kind of a bidding war. And the play had just begun at the Donmar. So my wife Cheryl and I jumped on a plane and went to see it for ourselves. And I literally was so swept up in the sort of the range of emotions that I felt watching it. The drama of these two remarkable individuals, what I learned about it, the things that I was feeling all over again that I had felt when I'd watched the interviews in 1977. Literally, when the play was over, I met Michael Sheen, I met Frank Langella, I congratulated them on great performances. I went out onto the sidewalk, called my agents, and said, I've got to direct this. It's going to be a movie. I'll make it my next movie.
Really? And you went out, you made the phone call right there to your agent in LA, I guess, was it?
Yes.
Yeah. And you decided eventually in doing the movie that you would keep, of course, Michael Sheen and the two leads and Frank Langella.
Yes.
Was that a difficult decision? I mean, obviously a number of major stars were quoted as possibles for it, like Warren Beatty and others.
Yes.
But was it an easy decision for you to make?
Ultimately it was easy because both of these guys really put their stamp on these roles, as characters in that play. And it reached a point where anyone else was going to be operating in their shadows. And I was willing to make that commitment on that evening outside the Donmar because I was very excited about the possibility of making the movie with these guys. And their understanding of their characters seemed to deepen and broaden, and I really felt like movie audiences ought to have a chance to witness that for themselves.
And when you have a situation like that, was it different? Did Frank and Michael have to do something different, or did you have to do something different with them to translate from a stage performance to a cinema performance? Or was it very much the same?
Well, of course, they're film actors as well.
Yes,
so they knew they had to make an adjustment. But Mostly, I think I made them trust and understand the fact that I was going to use the camera to really capture every nuance. So anything that they'd explored in doing the play, anything that they wanted to try once and for all with that character, I wanted the camera to capture that, and I wanted them to trust me to take it back to the editing room and sort of build the performances. And I wanted them to trust that the lens would pick up those nuances. And they were, I think, felt very liberated by that approach.
And you said in your article in the Times the other day that that in fact, to you, the essential message, if that's the right word, because it's an entertainment as well, as you said in the piece, but I mean, is that accountability matters. That's the lesson you take from the story.
Even as I saw the play, I sort of relived, frankly, what I experienced in watching the interviews, which was there's a kind of an inclination to, as I was watching you interview President Nixon, to want to forgive, because I went into it not a Nixon hater. I was just confused. You know, we'd been through this horrible trauma. There were just a lot of questions left unanswered. You obviously recognized that it was all cloaked in mystery, and that there were people like me, millions of us, who wanted to know more. And you sort of achieved this amazing thing when you were able to stage these interviews. And I began feeling like, well, look, Nixon's a remarkable guy. He's obviously a great intellect. Maybe we were all too hard on him. Maybe they were too hard on him. Maybe it was political assassination from the left, and enemies, or were there real abuses? And slowly but surely, I began to feel that I was getting some answers, and I was seeing it in his face, and I was seeing it by the sort of the choice of questions that you were, digging with, and the sort of the details that you were coming back at him with, and it was important to realize once and for all that now he should have stepped down. He had to step down. That was the right thing for America. That was just, and so that's what I came away with. And I think that's still the message that I don't care how charming, how brilliant, how capable a person is, in a democracy, they can't take the law into their own hands, no matter who they are.
One last section of our interview, Ron, your career. I read that you, in fact, made your debut on stage at 18 months, and your...
So I'm told.
Yeah, they didn't tell you at the time. And a screen debut at 4, was that?
Yeah, in a movie called The Journey, which starred Yul Brynner and Deborah Carr. And the reason my parents agreed to let me do it was that, well, my father, Rance, was going to play a small part in it, and it was going to happen in Europe. We filmed in Vienna, and my folks didn't have a lot of cash on hand at the time. Felt like it might be their one and only opportunity to get to Europe, and my one and only opportunity as well. And we did it, and I have very fond memories of it, and photographs that Yul Brynner took of my father, myself, me at age 4.
And then television came first at the age of 8, and then at 17. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, right after we got back, I think the way I kind of got my young career going is that I acted in some live television programs like Playhouse 90, and in those days the Red Skelton Show was done live, and they needed some kids for some of his sketches when he was playing Freddie the Freeloader, and I was able to do that. And even though I was 4 or 5 years old, my father was able to teach me enough that I didn't screw up the live performance. And that's really what got my career going.
That's what really got it going. But then you were about 8 when you did the Andy Griffith Show.
Yeah.
And about 17 when you did, of course, the memorable Happy Days.
Yeah.
And you actually, towards the end, started the transition to directing.
Yes.
You directed some episodes of Happy Days, which everyone remembers.
Yeah.
But,
well, no, actually, I didn't direct any episodes of Happy Days.
Really?
I was asked to. But we had a wonderful comedy genius, Jerry Paris, fantastic director, and I didn't want to rob the rest of the cast or our program from what I thought was his sort of genius. But I did start directing television movies, and I also directed car crash comedies for Roger Corman, famous B movie director from America and producer. And so during the off season from Happy Days, I'd be off doing these low budget productions, but I was learning a hell of a lot and producing some of them myself as well. then I met Brian Grazer just as the show was ending, and he and I began this partnership, and that led to a company that's still around today, Imagine Films, which is one of the producers of Frost Nixon.
Absolutely, and in fact, the fact that you started so young, at the age of 4, means you must have celebrated your 50th anniversary in show business.
This year, in fact, Frost Nixon is my 50th anniversary film, and which is a great honor, and I'm very proud of this movie. It's it's a remarkable drama that Peter Morgan has fashioned. Thank you for having catalyzed the events that would lead to this kind of creative opportunity for me, and it's a sort of look. It's one thing to sit and make a movie about somebody's life, which is always its own sort of high wire act. It's very daunting to then sit and watch the movie with them, or then get that phone call. What did you think, and get the feedback. This is a real Twilight Zone moment to actually sit and be interviewed by you, having made a movie about.
This is a Twilight Zone moment. That's a very good phrase. And talking of 50 years and all of that, how has Hollywood changed in that time? Totally, or only a bit?
No, not totally. And here's something interesting. When I was directing Cocoon, which was 1983 or 4. I worked with a guy who was then 96 years old who played a small part in it. And this was in Florida. He'd retired. He was still driving. Played a character in it called Smiley. And it turned out that he had worked in movies in New York when they were based in New York before they even moved to Hollywood in 1915. Oh. And I said, one day I sat with him at lunch and I said, well, how's it all changed? And he said, same-o, same-o. He said, he said, hurry up and wait. He said, the only thing is now you have to shut up. In those days, we could just keep talking during the takes. Oh, but, the process of getting fragments of story on film, recorded for a camera, really has not changed all that much. The equipment's lighter. The cinematic possibilities are a little more varied, but the problem of and challenges of telling a story remains unchanged really from my childhood, and the things I learned then still have great value today. The media, the outlets change, the distribution systems change, and suddenly you have to be prepared to imagine that your movie might be viewed on somebody's handheld, on their phone.
But it doesn't really change the actual making of the movie.
No, and as long as there's a way to tell a story that people can experience, I'm delighted to be in that field. It's a fascinating way of life.
Well, here's to the next 27 films. In the next 50 years.
Well,
Great to see you,
What a
Ron.
pleasure.
Thank you for doing
Thank you.
this.
It was an honor.